Salutations, respected viewers. Here I am at Eaton Gate, London, in this very exclusive district near Sloane Square, where the Sloane Rangers were known to inhabit in the 80s. That's the book about the Sloane Ranger. Anyway, this is the house of Bevan and his wife Jennie Lee, both Labour MPs. And as you can see, it's very she. But such houses were not ruinously expensive in the old days. So who were they? We'll start with Bevan, always known as Nye Bevan, not to be confused with Ernest Bevan, who was a Labour MP at the same time. Nye Bevan spells Bevan with an A-N, Ernest Bevan with an I-N. They're not related. So Nye Bevan was born in Wales in 1897. His father was a miner. He grew up in a working class community. He had difficulties at school, a stutter, and he left school at the earliest opportunity. He was a miner himself. However, he was fascinated by politics. He became active in the trades unions and the Labour Party. And in his part of Wales, the Labour movement was very popular and highly active, because miners seemed to be a perfect example of the working class being exploited by these avaricious capitalist bosses. And the miners were working in dreadful conditions, quite dangerous. But because they had mighty unions, they managed to raise their wages and improve their conditions. And in the First World War, he served down the mine, because the United Kingdom really needed coal for industrial power, for trains. Ships were still using coal in some cases, not always oil. And that was accepted, and the government gave in to strikes quite easily because it couldn't afford to do without coal. The United Kingdom had almost 1 million miners in the First World War, out of a population of 45 million people, who somebody's coming along. So then he was elected MP for Tredegar, his hometown, in 1929. He'd forced out the sitting Labour MP, he got himself into the House of Commons, saying, "You'll never believe how ordinary some of these extraordinary people were." He was underwhelmed by other MPs. He didn't think they were so impressive at all, yet they were exalted. And as soon as he got into Parliament, the person he really inveighed against was David Lloyd George, the former Liberal Prime Minister and a Welshman. The Welsh wizard was adulated by many in Wales, but Nye Bevan savaged Lloyd George as having been an ally of the Tories, which was true. So Nye Bevan had helped set up a social medicine scheme in his hometown of Tredegar. And by the Second World War, he was very popular indeed. And he arranged a scheme, just like in the First World War, for young men to be miners, serve their country that way rather than the military. They were known as Bevan boys because of him. He was Secretary of State for Health in the first post-war Labour government. Then, because finances were very straitened, Clement Attlee's Labour government after the war said, well, we're going to have to charge for prescriptions and glasses. And Bevan wouldn't take this, people having to pay for spectacles. He resigned from the cabinet because of it. So he was part of the Keep Left group, and he was a real standard bearer for the left within the Labour Party. Some people felt that was perhaps a bit too irresponsible. He was being a prima donna, resigning from the cabinet over this one issue, when overall he very much approved of their programme of nationalisation. Soon Labour was in opposition. He was touted as a possible leader of the Labour Party, though that never transpired. So the United Kingdom became a nuclear weapons state in 1953. It was only the third one in the world after the United States and the Soviet Union. But some of the Labour left by the late 50s were deeply unhappy with nuclear weapons, and they founded the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. Well, really it's a cross-party group. Remember, Clement Attlee's Labour government had pursued nuclear weapons immediately after the war. Ernest Bevan had said, we must have a Union Jack on it, a nuclear bomb. Bevan, he disappointed many in the Labour left by saying, no, the United Kingdom must have nuclear weapons if we're going to be taken seriously as a major power and for our defence. We can't always rely on the Americans to back us up. Well, Suez was to prove that. And he said it was moral spasm to be against nuclear weapons, and saying that we're not going to have nuclear arms would be like sending our foreign minister naked into a conference. We've got to have them. And why is it acceptable to kill people with conventional weapons but not nuclear arms? It's ridiculous. Weapons are not made obsolescent in that case. They're only superseded by weapons of even more destructive capacity, even greater destructive capacity. They can't be disinvented now that nuclear weapons have been invented. Anyway, he died suddenly in 1960, and his seat was inherited by Michael Foot. It was subsequently renamed Ebbw Vale. So that's him. He's still exalted as a lion of the left. His wife, Jennie Lee, was born in Scotland. Her father was also a miner, grew up in a proletarian family, and she went to Edinburgh University at the age of 17 to read history and law. In those days, only about 2% of the population attended third level of education, and for a working class woman, tertiary education was almost impossible. So it says something about her exceptional accomplishments that she managed to achieve this. And then she was involved with the Labour Party, a Labour MP herself. She survived her husband by many years. So it says much that on 2 MP salaries they could afford to buy such a residence in a very desirable area. You'd have to be a multimillionaire to live there now. It may seem more than trifle hypocritical that they lived in relative opulence despite professing their concern for the needy. They could, of course, have moved some homeless people in with them, but they didn't. Helping the poor was for other people to do. But he was a bit of a champagne socialist, Bevan would have said. He did not feel any bourgeois guilt, because he didn't grow up middle class, about enjoying the finer things in life, such as cigars. But Bevan, he was certainly an outstanding orator, and you may have seen his Trafalgar Square rant against Sir Anthony Eden, saying that Eden was too stupid to be Prime Minister if he really believed what he said about the Suez crisis. But Eden had been to Christchurch, Oxford, he spoke fluent in Arabic and so on. The one thing he could not accuse Eden of was being stupid. Bevan had been to the Workers' Educational College, and fair enough, that's because it was almost impossible for someone from a working class family in the 1920s to go to university. That's enough about these two outstanding socialistic politicians.